Good morning and welcome to the first day of the second week of our budget hearings. This morning we are honored to be joined by Pennsylvania's Attorney General and the Office of the Attorney General. Before we begin, Chairman Struzzi, do you have any introductory comments?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Harris, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Just to put it in the context for those who are viewing and listening, for the Office of the Attorney General, the Governor is proposing a $171.5 million general fund spend for the upcoming fiscal year, representing an overall increase of roughly about $20 million or 13% over the current fiscal year. However, I think it's important to note that the original request from the Attorney General's office was roughly about $190 million, or considering the Governor's proposal, about a $19 million, not a reduction, but the Governor's proposing $19 million less than what the Attorney General's office requested. So I think it's important that as we go through the hearing today, we understand, what these numbers mean, what the increases are for, what they would have been used for, because I think that it's very important, the work that you all do to keep our communities and the public safe here in Pennsylvania. So we look forward to the testimony and the questions today. Thank you.
Thank the Chairman. Testifiers, would you please stand so we can swear everyone in and get started? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, so help you God? You may be seated. All right, in the middle of the table, there is a box. That is our timekeeper. When the box turns green, our members will commence with their 5 minutes of questioning. When the box turns yellow, that means that there are 30 seconds left. We ask that you would begin to wrap up your comments, and when it turns red, that means that time is over and has expired. We would ask our testifiers to please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphones, as folks are watching at home. Probably only my mother, but I'm sure there are folks watching. Yeah, my mom will text me and was like, "Well, why didn't you ask this question? Why didn't you?" I'm like, first of all, why are you watching? And then she'll say, "Well, because you're my son, and I watch everything my son does." I'm like, "Okay, Mom." So anyway, if you're watching, good morning. I did text her good morning, though. We text every morning. Anyway, Attorney General Sunday, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any introductory comments, or would you like to jump right in?
Very brief, yes.
Mr. General, please proceed.
So thank you, Chairman Harris, Chairman Struzzi. Thank you, all the members of the committee. It is an absolute honor to be here with you this morning, and I'd like to introduce those that are sitting with me at the table here today. So to my left and your right is the First Deputy Attorney General, Kara Bowser. To her left is Greg Rowe. Greg is Senior Counsel to the Attorney General, and he leads a lot of different initiatives in the office that I'm sure we'll probably talk about. To my right is my Chief of Staff, Kyle King, and to Kyle's right is our Deputy Chief of Staff, Ben Wren. I would also like to note for the record that my mother is watching too. So it's not just yours. I will say very briefly, because I know we'll probably kind of want to jump into this, but being 1 year in office, it has been just an absolute honor of my lifetime. I want to let everyone here know that the greatest honor is to work with the staff of the AG's office. We are very, very blessed in Pennsylvania to have so many thoughtful, bright, smart, talented employees and public servants working every day all throughout Pennsylvania. I mean, that includes everything from the attorneys who are in court almost every day, through the amazing administrative staff, through all of our agents that put themselves in harm's way literally every single day. And it is an absolute honor and privilege to be representing them here and to work with them and to consider them colleagues. And so with that being said, the work that we do in the AG's office, and we'll, I'm sure, touch on that this morning, absolutely would not be possible without the support of this legislature for our mission and all the incredible people that make up the Attorney General's office. I will note that the collaboration with regard to the budget is one part of this, but in my first year, I've been just very, very amazed at the collaborative effort from all throughout the whole political spectrum in working with the AG's office through education, through different initiatives, and just to really work together and communicate. I think communication is the key to victory. And I look forward to hearing today the questions, and I look forward to the hearing, and I want to thank everyone for being here. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you, sir. We will start with Representative Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. General, and I appreciate the work of you and your staff. Wanted to ask two questions. The first one is about House Bill 1460. I want to thank you and your staff for supporting House Bill 1460. Since you were here last time, we saw the collapse of Crozier. This was a hospital that was bought by a for-profit company. Private equity was involved, and before we knew it, we had an entire health system collapse, an entire county stripped of an incredibly important hospital, patients robbed of care in the name of profits over patient care. I'm proud to be a co-prime sponsor along with Representative Borowski and pretty much the entire Delaware County legislative body in the House to support House Bill 1460, which will give your office powers to regulate these transitions, these mergers, these acquisitions, these buyouts that are bad for the community. It also stops the sale-leaseback program where a hospital actually sells, the institution sells a hospital and then leases it back to another part of its parent company, getting money from it. Mr. Attorney General, can you tell a little bit why this bill is important to protect patients and to protect our communities and our community hospitals?
Absolutely. I appreciate the question, and I also appreciate your collaboration with our office in navigating this unbelievably complex potential legislation and a very complex issue. I want to start out by saying, when I was here before you a year ago, we were in the throes of just a situation that I couldn't even imagine that we would be dealing with, and that was Crozier. And again, and you'll hear a theme of this today, but I want to again shout out to the employees in the AG's office who worked 24/7 to do everything in their power with the tools they had to keep that hospital open. And every conversation that I heard amongst my staff, and obviously in speaking with you and the other legislators, was the same thing, which is we want to make sure that people have access to health care. What do we got to do to get there? And so to that point, very simply, I said to my office right away, hey, let's collaborate. Let's find a way to get this done in a manner that can best protect citizens so that they do have access to health care. I mean, what we saw at Crozier was just unbelievably sad. It was, those of us that happen to live right next to a hospital don't understand what it's like to not have that experience and have to drive distances. And also when you look at it through the lens of rural Pennsylvania as well. So we did two things this year. The first thing was working on identifying ways that we can be supportive in collaborating with everyone across the aisle on getting a bill passed that would give us more power to be able to do everything we can so that this doesn't happen again. And so very simply, I can't think of many things in the world that are more important than making sure that you have access to health care, that when someone needs a specialist, they don't have to drive 5 hours to get there, and also that you have an emergency room that's readily available so that people can go get the appropriate care when they have an emergency need. And so, I'm not sure if you have any follow-up questions, but this is an important bill for our office. My Deputy Chief of Staff, Ben Wren, has been working on this nonstop. I have not seen any recent language on it, but I do look forward to seeing that, and I look forward to continuing to work with you and everyone else to get this done.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that work, and hopefully we can get this bill across the finish line this session. Wanted to ask very briefly about some of what we're seeing in places like Minnesota. I can tell you a lot of my constituents are very concerned about the images they're seeing, the cases of abuse that we're seeing, the federal overreach that we're seeing in places like Minneapolis. And people want to know, are we going to be protected if that starts happening here in Pennsylvania? And I wanted to ask you, Mr. Attorney General, does your office have the tools it needs to protect citizens when federal actions overstep state law?
So the short answer, that's a multi-pronged answer, but to begin with, I want to say that any loss of life, and this is unbelievably important, under any circumstances is absolutely horrific. And, you know, coming to this job through being a district attorney, I spent a lot of my career working on and dealing with incidents where someone may have been harmed or killed at the hands of law enforcement. And so I come to this with an understanding of the critical nature of having appropriate, intensive, and transparent investigations when that does happen. I keep the red lights on. Do I have to stop?
You can finish the answer.
Okay, and so sorry, I apologize. The chairman scares me. So, so with that being said, very simply, we have the current tools that would be needed if we were called upon to investigate criminal action on the part of anyone in Pennsylvania. We have 3 investigative grand juries that we run throughout the state. We have the expertise in the office, and that's some expertise that we actually use on a pretty regular basis. So that's the short answer to that question.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Rigby.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. Attorney General Sunday, thank you, and thank your staff for the work that you do. According to federal statistics, 78% of police departments are struggling to recruit qualified candidates. Excuse me. Between 2020 and 2021, police resignations rose 18% and retirements increased by 45%. On average, 70% of law enforcement agencies support more difficulty hiring today than 5 years ago. Some contributing factors to these statistics include lack of support, prioritizing work, better environments, smaller agency budgets, we're seeing with a lot of our smaller municipals, and the mandated overtimes. Your budget documentation references that due to the downturn in the economy over the past few years, municipalities have been forced to lay off police officers or even cut their forces. It's a two-part question. Can you share what discussions and feedback your office has had and received from local law enforcement, and how your office is currently working to address these concerns? And what are you doing to support our own law enforcement officers, as well as your office collaborates with them? I do know that you were in our town just a week ago, so we thank you for that on a big drug bust. Thank you.
Rep. Rigby, I cannot tell you how grateful I am that you asked this question. We have an absolute crisis in Pennsylvania with regard to public servants. And yes, it's law enforcement. It is also prosecutors, public defenders, children, youth, and family workers, people that work at Area on Aging, all of these different public servant positions that are the absolute foundation of all of the initiatives that we put in place and all of the work that we do. For whatever reason, we're at this place now where those jobs, people just don't want to do those jobs. And it's really, really scary because we come up with, like I said, so many amazing initiatives, but if you don't have people to do that work, it's really, really dangerous. With regard to law enforcement officers in particular, right now, so the Senate created a task force on law enforcement recruitment and retention, of which I'm the chair. And looking into that task force, or looking into the work that we've done, there's a lot of things that jump out right away. Yes, you do have to address funding with regard to salaries and things of that nature, but there's a lot more to it in addition to that. We have a mental health crisis in Pennsylvania generally, let alone when we look at our first responders. And so when you look at our first responders and the type of work that they do, where you have first responders who literally go to maybe 4 or 5 traumatic events literally every single day, it takes its toll on their lives. Law enforcement suicide is at an all-time high. The pain on their families is beyond overwhelming. We had absolute tragedies in the county that I live in York County last year, where we lost 4 police officers as a result of violence. When we look at law enforcement and police officers, if we can't square this away, it's not going to be good. It's already not good. And the reason why I say that is because we have put so many demands on police officers as a society. So we ask police officers to be mental health responders, domestic violence counselors, substance abuse counselors. We ask them to have the answer to literally every question the minute it's asked, oftentimes within an 8-hour shift. And another thing that's really important, so, you know, my family, my wife is from a different country, and And I will tell you that in America, we have this ability to call 911 and someone comes to your house. In a lot of places, that's not the case. And they come to your house to help you. And so very simply, I think that we collectively, just like we do with so many other things, can work together on this issue. We're going to put a report together, and that report's going to be available for the legislature. And once that report's done, again, I look forward to working with everyone here to identify ways that we all can collaboratively be part of the solution, thinking outside of the box. And again, it's law enforcement, it's firefighters, but it's also CYF workers, area on aging workers. It's everybody.
Thank you. And I will mention our local police academy. This year, again, we've seen an increase in the number of students. We've almost doubled. So we are starting to see that trend change a little bit. We got a few more coming back in to law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman, Representative Young.
Good morning and welcome, Attorney General Sunday and team. My question is around human trafficking prevention, appropriation. It was new for the fiscal year 2024-2025. Can you share with us some of your highlights from your department on the issue here in the Commonwealth? What are some of your takeaways from this past year?
So, Representative, thank you for that question, and I also want to thank you on your advocacy for human trafficking victims and your collaborative work that you've done in this space. And so, with that being said, our human trafficking section here in Pennsylvania handles the most significant human trafficking cases across the state. And we've been a leader in investigating and prosecuting these cases, and the cases have increased considerably after the establishment of the human trafficking section, and that's really important to understand. And this occurred as a result of us being awarded a grant to create a multidisciplinary team to attack human trafficking with a collaborative approach by partnering with victim services. And now, that's important because, you know, we're at a place where the human trafficking legislation in Pennsylvania changed, or was amended, I think like 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, a lot of the human trafficking victims that we all advocate for were considered defendants. And they were prosecuted as prostitutes. There really wasn't further investigation into what really was going on and what's happening here. And so a huge part of successful human trafficking prosecutions are training, and I know you're familiar with what important training is, training police, community members to understand what it even is in the first place. Now that we're out there and all this training is happening, the cases are flowing in at numbers that we could not have even predicted. So last year, for example, the section made 78 arrests, and we currently, even with those arrests, we currently have 81 active investigations throughout the entire state. That's an increase of 125% since the formation of the unit in January of 2024. And so I think that from my observations in doing this job for as long as I have a lot of victim-oriented people on my close staff here that did victim work their entire lives. And I can tell you that we are doing a lot. We have a lot more to do and way more to go. And what I hope to see is a place where all of law enforcement understands how do you connect a victim to services. How do you get them the services? How do you do it in a manner that's efficient for them? I mean, because we all want these individuals to be able to change their lives around and be healthy, successful, happy people. And so very simply, the unit has been very successful. It's increased at levels that we couldn't have imagined. And I want to also say very quickly, when you look at other work in the AG's office, like our drug work, you look at organized retail theft, you look at the different child predator section, oftentimes in doing those investigations, because our agents are trained to understand this, they will identify human trafficking victims in those other cases, and then that will shift over to the human trafficking section as well.
Thank you for that. That was actually touching on my second part of the question, because as I am also going around the Commonwealth speaking with various survivors, there's a lot of pieces that are still missing, according to them, and I'm trying to figure out a better way that we can streamline the resources from the Commonwealth that trickles down to them being able to grasp. So what we're doing on a system level doesn't always translate on the survivors level. And so I would like to know, what would your department be able to do, or is already doing, that can help streamline such collaborative resources and efforts so that we can work together in supporting not only the survivors, but also those of us who are in this space?
So that's a great question. So the starting point, before I run out of time, very simply is we will continue to collaborate on this nonstop.
Okay.
But the point I want to make is this issue of services is something that we see in other areas as well. And one of the things we're trying to do in the office here, and Greg Rowe, if you don't know him, he's, make sure you talk to Greg about some of these issues. But what we're doing is we're trying to identify what are the best places for people to go. Because unfortunately, you see people pop up and say, hey, I'm here to serve victims. They may not have the proper training or the resources or whatever. And then you have other places that might be nonprofits. Like in York County, there's a place called Sparrow's House, and they do a wonderful, fantastic job. So to your point, this is the next step, and we have to identify where those places are. And a lot of this, in my opinion, does go back to training for police and prosecutors, because when these cases start is when that contact has to begin, like instantly. Instantly, as soon as that connection's made, when we go after the trafficker, that very day, our trafficking section coordinates immediately with the victims to get them to where they need to go. And to your point, to your exact point, if we don't have the right place to go, then what are we going to do?
I look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady. Representative Krupa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, and thank you for being here and for all that you do to protect the residents of the Commonwealth. As the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer, your core responsibility is public safety, and I have faith that you're doing everything within your power, perhaps limited by your budget, to meet that responsibility. My understanding is that your office has 258 legal counsel compared to the Office of General Counsel's nearly 600 legal professionals. Your hearing documentation includes or acknowledges that compensation disparities has led to the loss of experienced attorneys and difficulties recruiting new ones. So I have to ask, if we don't have the manpower or the budget to prosecute crimes and defend the laws that we've already passed, how can we credibly fulfill that responsibility? What good are these stronger statutes if we don't have the manpower to prosecute them? So my initial question, and I do have one follow-up, is are attorney vacancies affecting charging decisions, investigations, case timelines? Are victims seeing cases declined or delayed or not prosecuted because of staffing constraints? What specific resources do you need to ensure that justice is not essentially rationed?
So thank you for that question. And a starting point is, in any organization that exists, you have to have the experience and you have to have the people to do the job. And one thing that I have observed, and in all candor, I didn't recognize this prior to coming into the office, was that there is a disparity between the Office of Attorney General and the Governor's Office for General Counsel, and other places too, like the Philadelphia Law Department, other surrounding state attorneys general. And it's not just a couple $100, it might be thousands of dollars for a new hire. It could be even more as someone progresses through seniority. What I have seen over the last year is in particular with our civil cases, okay? The civil cases and the public protection or consumer protection cases. There's very unique skill sets that do those cases. Mm-hmm. And those individuals are just crushed. And when they see that they could walk across the street to the OGC and get maybe a $10,000 pay raise, then it's hard for people, in today's world, to not do that. We are constantly fighting to keep people in those positions. And that's something that, if you were to ask me what one of the most important thing that we're here to talk about today, it's about our people. It's about our people. And I think that properly funding the GGO account puts us in a position where we can start working on that to make sure that they know that they're valued and they know that they are cared about. We do everything, to your first part of the question, we do everything we can to get the work done that we can with our finite resources. We have created sections where we've moved people around from other places to get it done. For example, the new elder exploitation section. We do that on a regular basis. We've done it with our cold case section to make sure that we get the work done. But to your point, everything we say yes to means we say no to something else.
And I can't imagine the number of complaints that you have to filter through and make decisions about initial investigations and how time-consuming just that initial evaluation must be. Shifting gears just slightly, last year I formally requested that your office investigate serious allegations involving a nonprofit organization in Fayette County that administers substantial public funding. Publicly available IRS Form 990 disclosures show repeated related party transactions over multiple years, including loans to businesses owned by directors and multi-million-dollar transactions involving board members. Now, I understand that you can't comment on any pending investigation, so I'm going to ask generally, when a nonprofit receives public funds, and those nonprofits show repeated insider financial transactions, does that fall within your jurisdiction under nonprofit laws or breach of fiduciary duty standards? And I ask for the people of Fayette County who deserve some transparency with respect to how these taxpayer funds are seemingly being used to line the pockets of board members.
So to begin with, the short answer is yes, that's what we're here for. And I obviously can't discuss ongoing investigations, whether they exist or not. But what I can say very simply is we take these allegations very, very seriously. And again, to your point earlier, with the resources we have, we do everything we can with the resources we have. And so I know my time is up. That being said, I have with me today behind me the head of our Public Protection Division, Sean Kirkpatrick, who I have no doubt he would be more than happy to speak to you off the record or separately about any specific case you want to talk about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Abney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Attorney General, and your staff for being here today. I want to talk in a similar vein about staffing, but not necessarily about filling vacancies, but about requests for new staff, additional staff. I know in the executive budget there was no new funding for you all to bring on new staff, but I believe in you all's request. You all requested about 30 new staff. So could you help us understand, if we were to put that into the budget, what those 30 new staff would do? And if we aren't able to get it into the budget, what does that cause for you all in terms of any limitations to your ability to carry out the duties of your office?
I appreciate that question, and I will answer it as concisely as concisely as I can. The two biggest sections that this impacts, and I will say, just so you know, in your duty, for your roles on this committee, that we have, so one thing we've not been doing is leaving open positions sit. And so if we need a position, we have been actually canceling those positions and moving them over, just so you know, like we're not just letting these open positions sit. Two areas that are really important. The first one is the Safe to Say Something program. The Safe to Say Something program is so unbelievably important for so many different reasons. And as you know, and I'm sure you're familiar with the Safe to Say Something program, I just want to see real quick. We've been given additional duties for the Safe to Say Something program. And those additional duties pertain to schools having to provide feedback to us within different time periods, okay? So you have 30 days if it's a non-emergency. If it's an emergency, it's like 48 hours. And the information we're getting is so unbelievably critical for us to be able to effectively achieve the goal of the legislature. We've determined we need 5 additional positions for the Safe to Say Something program. And just so you know, if I recall, and I'm sure someone up here will correct me if I'm wrong, we didn't know that that amendment was coming when we submitted last year's budget because the budget process was expanded. That legislation was passed after we've went through our process, so we just had no idea that that would be happening to get to that point. Another area would be with regard to our tobacco unit. So very thankful for the work that was done, total bipartisan effort on the vape registry. And so the vape registry, as you know, that is so important to make sure that we're in a position that we can keep this disgusting, illegal, harmful substances out of children's hands through the vape registry. To do that, we will be needing additional bodies to satisfy those needs specifically with the vape registry. And so if I were to tell you two things right off the bat that are critical, it's us being able to satisfy our statutorily mandated duties under the Safe to Say Something program, and also our duties under the Tobacco Enforcement Division. And I want to say something real quick about the Tobacco Enforcement section. A lot of people, and I again didn't realize this prior to getting elected, but now I live it all day. A lot of people think that tobacco money just comes, right? Like there's nothing we do, we just sit back and hang out, and we're going to get a check. Wrong. There is a lot of work that goes into ensuring that we are satisfying the parameters of the agreement. And that's what they do. They work every day to make sure that we are. And the minute we don't, I promise you, there'll be litigation to try to take that money away from us. So those are two main areas that a lot of people may not think about, but they're so important for the safety of the Commonwealth.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually glad you mentioned the Safe to Say program because I was interested. I saw that you all have recently launched your Teen Talk series or events that you're doing to sort of at the intersection of social media and mental health for our young kids. Can you talk a little bit about that program? And I know that the governor had in his proposal talked about removing cell phones in schools. And so I wanted to get your opinion and your thoughts on that, as well as talk a little bit about the program, the events that you have.
So I'll take them in reverse order.
Okay.
So with regard to cell phones, I'm not an expert in child learning, but I will say that having a young son, I personally would not be sad if they didn't have cell phones in schools. I think that's a common understanding, at least from most of the people in the world that I've spoken to. And so I think looking at the totality of learning in Pennsylvania, I think that's a very good thing, to not have cell phones in schools. My red light's on. Does that mean I'm done?
30 seconds. Go ahead.
Okay.
You're good. Good.
So I'm going to start with the Bucks County Teen Talk real quick, and then hopefully someone else might ask me to keep going with it. I don't know. But the Bucks County Teen Talk, that was so important. One of the biggest absolute challenges we are all going to face as we move forward in life is the issue of technology and its impact on child brains, on how children learn, on children's mental health. And so we here in Pennsylvania have taken a lead role in being in a position to hold hold companies accountable in this space, which is a much longer answer. But the point about these teen talks is to ask them, because we as adults, we sit around and we all think we have the answers to everything, right? Well, at least some of us do. But the reality is we got to get out there. We got to talk to kids. And so when we went out there, our mind was blown. And I'll just tell you very quickly, first question to these kids, and these are kids from all over Bucks County. The question was, all right, how many of you use social media? All of them. Okay, so of you that use social media, is there even a possibility you could not use it? None of them said they could not use it because it's so ingrained into the way of their daily life. And then the third question was, I said, how many of you think that you are being harmed in some way? And these are 11th and 12th graders by social media. Every single hand shot right up. And so that was our first meeting, and we're going to be doing these all over the state. And we're going to incorporate what they tell us into a report that we'll certainly share with you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to pivot back to the discussion that you were having with the good lady from Philadelphia regarding human trafficking. And the Attorney General's office has had a long-standing history of investigating and prosecuting human trafficking, which I'm very thankful for. According to current agency data, since the inception of the Human Trafficking Unit, your office has made 78 arrests, and as of February 2026, has 81 active investigations, which you referred to earlier. That's an increase of 125% since the formation of the unit in January of 2024. The governor's budget proposal recommends an increase of $627,000, or a 38% increase, and it projects level funding the program for the next 5 years. The good lady from Philadelphia appropriately asked, what else could we be doing? I would think that that's going to cause you some problems, the fact that it's level funded. Tell me, do you think his budget is sufficient for your needs at this point?
So the short answer is no. And the human trafficking section, being one of the fastest growing sections, which is also combined with cases that involve the highest victim needs, is an important part of this. So when we look at individuals that are making arrests in different cases, everything's different. These are some of the most intensive cases that we could possibly have. When we look at that tremendous increase in human trafficking arrests, we turn cases away like daily. We are constantly ingrained, like there are cases constantly coming at us. This upcoming year, we have some very challenging things that are coming our way with regard to human trafficking. Some of the largest human trafficking events in the world are going to be right here in Pennsylvania. So obviously, America 250 is huge. FIFA, the World Cup. The World Cup is historically one of the largest events that brings with it human trafficking literally in the entire world. We have the NFL draft, which is taking place in Pittsburgh, and we also have the Major League Baseball All-Star Game in Philadelphia this summer. We are constantly being requested to participate in task forces, which we are, in collaborating with all of our partners. This goes back to one of the first questions asked about police staffing. So when we have a situation where so many police departments are woefully understaffed, and they're just trying to keep their head above water, they turn to us to provide that work with regard to, for example, human trafficking investigations. We've been reached out to from other states. We're working with Delaware and New Jersey. Those three AGs are working together to figure out how we can help each other on this as well. To be able to successfully keep citizens safe with this human trafficking and with what's coming this year, we have to be in a position to be able to do these multi-jurisdictional investigations. And any one of those could be $15,000 for one investigation. That's how much it costs, where we go to the hotels and the motels, and we do that type of work. And so very simply, remaining at where we are right now will not put us in a strategically advantageous position as an agency to be able to utilize our resources to fight human trafficking in Pennsylvania, especially considering all these different events that are constantly coming here.
And that's very concerning. Specifically, though, tell me what are some things you will not be able to do without additional funding?
I think it'll come down to not being able to provide the type of support that we should be providing to the local police, to counties, municipalities that are requesting our help. Because, again, these investigations, they're not like overnight. Like what we do is, in our agents in the office, we don't, like a primary mission of ours isn't pulling people over, right? We're doing intense, long-term investigative cases that involve undercover, that involve a lot of different people. And it goes back to the very simple fact, everything we say yes to means we're saying no to something else.
Right.
And so when you look at the totality of the legislatively mandated work that we have to do and understand that, I just think that when we look at public safety, we have to be in a position to provide the support for these agencies specifically with regard to human trafficking. And so to that point, I would ask that we would receive the funding that we requested in our budget to be able to keep Pennsylvanians safe.
And we're so thankful for everything that you do. This big discrepancy in the budget almost implies the governor is not supportive of law enforcement, and we would hope that that would change. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady. I will remind members, let's not give our opinions on what other duly elected officials believe. So, Representative Kincaid.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to start with I'm glad that your office is able to take advantage of the human trafficking line that we were able to get into the budget last time because it was not originally in the governor's budget, but we were able to do that. So glad that works out. So over the last year, the governor's office has joined or filed 20 lawsuits against the federal government on behalf of the people of Pennsylvania. To date, 7 of those lawsuits have rulings in favor of the people of Pennsylvania, and the rest are still pending. The Attorney General's office is the people's lawyer, and I'm wondering if you can talk about where the Attorney General's office would normally be the office to step in and protect the rights of Pennsylvanians or the resources that have been allocated, why your office has not been doing that and has been deferring to the office of the governor.
I appreciate that question very much, and I also appreciate the work to get the human trafficking line item where it should have been. We appreciate that tremendously. It's important. So this is a great question, and so we in Pennsylvania are in a very unique situation, and that uniqueness, in my opinion, is oftentimes a strength, and I really do believe that. And so we are, and I will just say, just because I say it all the time when people ask me different questions like this, there's no other state in the country that has a Republican AG and a Democrat governor and a divided legislature. We're the only one. We are a special thing that exists in this nation. And when I first approached this job, when I first got elected, and I think you might have asked me the same question a year ago. I'm not sure. I don't have my glasses on, but I think it was you. And so, you know, we took a lot of time to dive into this and figure out what is the right way to handle all of this. And so this is important to understand. So in many states, the dynamic we have between the AG's office and the Office for General Counsel, it literally doesn't even exist. In most states, the OGC is underneath the Attorney General's office. So the AG has all of the agency staff and attorneys. And here, as was mentioned by someone earlier, we have approximately close to 600 attorneys, the agency attorneys and others in the OGC. We have around 260 in the AG's office. So both of us, we have statutorily defined duties here in Pennsylvania, and these are finite. And everything that we say yes to means we say no to something else. And so the AG is responsible, and I'm saying this for everybody, the AG is responsible for certain things specifically, right? And that's defending statutes in Pennsylvania. We must defend statutes in Pennsylvania. It's all of the different work, like human trafficking, the things that we've been assigned to do specifically. At the same time, the OGC has things that they have been statutorily mandated to do as well. So the interesting thing here is that we have the Commonwealth Attorneys Act. And we are watching the Commonwealth Attorneys Act actually operate right in front of us every day in a manner in which I think was the original intent of it. And so what I mean by that is, and this is an important piece, so I asked my team to look this up. I'm like, because the Commonwealth Attorneys Act is set up where the governor's office can request us to do litigation, right? And so last year, we were requested we received over 541 communications on litigation referrals, okay? And we, as an office, adopted 465 of them. There were other cases, which I think might be the ones you're referring to, that at the request of the OGC were delegated to the governor at the governor's request. And so that puts us in this position where there are some things that OGC can do that we also can do, but there are tons of things that I do that they can't do. I can't give them the authority.
Thank you. Sorry, I only have 30 seconds and I have
I'm
another
sorry.
question. So you submitted an amicus brief to the Commonwealth Court in Allegheny Reproductive Health Center versus DHS, and in that brief you stated that the Commonwealth had a compelling interest in protecting the health of women, citing that some women experience harmful psychological, emotional, and physical impacts as the result of abortion. You also acknowledged that some women may testify that having an abortion was a benefit, but that the state had to weigh those competing interests. What I find troubling about it is that in the argument, you completely excluded the women who have been harmed because they could not access an abortion. Because fundamentally, those are the women that are actually at issue in that case, women who, because of restrictions on Medicaid payments for abortion care, are unable to access an abortion. And a number of studies have found that those women who have been denied wanted abortions have more psychological problems than those who receive them, including greater levels of anxiety, stress, lower self-esteem, and lower life satisfaction. Over time, those women also develop more physical health problems. And we cannot have this conversation without talking about the abysmal rate of maternal mortality in this Commonwealth. 74% of maternal mortality cases are linked to mental health conditions, substance use and overdose, and injuries, all of which are increased in the population of women denied abortions. So I'm wondering if you can explain why you do not believe that the Commonwealth has a compelling interest in protecting the health of those women.
Yes, 30 seconds, please.
So, okay, 2 points I want to make here. And as I said with everyone, I'd be more than happy to sit down and talk one-on-one about any of these issues. But that being said, when I took office, I made it very clear to my staff that we will do something that a lot of AGs don't do, and that is we will follow the law and we will defend every statute that's passed by this body. Whether I like it, I don't like it, whether I'm indifferent to it. Because if I don't do that, then, and this is a really important answer to a really important question. If I don't do that, then as the body works through your job and comes up with statutes, and you don't think that I will defend them, then that will, I think that causes irreparable harm in your process. And so to that point, I said we are going to defend every statute that is passed by this body, that's signed into law by the governor, and that has not been ruled unconstitutional yet. And so I promise you, in my first year, I have successfully irritated the entire political spectrum by adhering to that, but I'm not going to stop. And so the minute that statute is determined to be unconstitutional, then our job is done. But we do it with everything on all sides of the aisle because that is the duty, that is my job. That's what I took an oath to do, and I will continue to do it.
Thank you. So just to clarify for just a second, just 10 seconds. Just to clarify, the reason that these women were excluded from your amicus brief was because they didn't fit that narrative?
No, I don't. I would have to look, honestly, I would have to talk to the authors, and I would have to take a dive into it and get a better understanding of it. But I would be more than happy to have that conversation and then meet with you and we can talk about it.
All right,
Thank
you.
the gentlelady, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity for maybe some additional time. That's very nice.
I did the same thing with Representative Marcel last week. Been fair
Yes,
on
sir.
both sides.
Yes. Well, welcome, Attorney General, and a special shout out. It's great to see a fellow Westmoreland County citizen at the front table there. So great to see. I really am wanting to, a couple of different areas. So hopefully we'll be able to be focused on our exchange, and that's building on this bipartisan effort that we've had in the House to really confront and combat human trafficking. Representative from Lawrence County, she had asked some follow-up questions. My good colleague from Philadelphia, we've advanced a human trafficking bill. Hopefully the Senate will get it across the governor's desk. But you had mentioned the NFL draft, which is going to be in Pittsburgh. They say 600,000 or 700,000 people. America 250, FIFA. In that America 250 funding or some of the other additional funding that's going to the draft, does your office receive operating funds or support to be able to combat the sex trafficking that everybody is concerned is really going to come in with those dollars? Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
I wasn't sure if
because that we are giving millions,
right,
and there is a sex trafficking concern. I'd like to get back to that GGO line and the difference. It's a $23 million difference between the governor's supported funding for your efforts and your request for your efforts. So as we look at human trafficking within these events, can you touch on the sense of urgency, the additional things that your office will be able to do to protect citizens, women, go after these trafficking?
Yes, absolutely. So without going into a greater conversation on I'll say the interaction between the GGO account and our other accounts that are restricted accounts, what we are specifically asking for with regard to human trafficking this year is an increase of $855,000. And the purpose of that is to add 2 positions. That's an attorney and an agent. To be able, because right now, as we sit, with all things being equal, we don't have the ability to keep up with what is already coming in. To bring these hurricanes of potential trafficking without having additional attorney or additional agent is going to be super bad. Mm-hmm. And so to that point, we're requesting $855,000. That's 2 positions, and that's really, really important. I will say that in the first year of the human trafficking section, just a little historical background, $542,000 was taken from GGO to pay for the efforts of the human trafficking section.
Yeah. Well, and that is a very reasonable ask, less than $1 million to help prepare and protect Pennsylvanians. I'd like to shift a little bit over, because what we've seen is human trafficking, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, it all is an undercurrent. And the gentleman earlier brought up about activities in Minnesota and concerns of Minnesota coming to Pennsylvania. I just want to point out, as we look at some of these instances of trafficking, there have been illegal criminal aliens arrested in Easton, Bellefonte, Philly, Dormont, even in historic Gettysburg. In Bellefonte, the ICE arrest of that criminal from Poland, exploitation of a minor, enforcement of a minor, sexual assault, sexual offense against a child. In Philadelphia, an illegal alien from Cuba recently arrested, lewd acts of a minor, cocaine possession and heroin, shifting from the sex trafficking into the drug trafficking side. It's another area where there's an $8 million gap between what your office would request for funding to be able to, and credit to both nationally, the efforts against fentanyl, and your efforts here in Pennsylvania. In Westmoreland County, we've dropped over 2 years, 25% less overdose deaths, from 95 down to 71. So lives are being saved in the efforts for law enforcement. How will this $8 million gap, be able to be invested a little bit more effectively, similar to the Operation Clean Sweep and preventative efforts to get fentanyl and these drug dealers?
So to begin with, I just want to share a little bit about the work that's being done by our Bureau of Narcotics Investigations. I think it's really important for people to understand that. It's also important to understand that all of this work we're doing with regard to attacking the supply also goes hand in hand with attacking the demand, which is something we're doing through the LEDI program, which we're expanding, and that's something I would like to talk about as well if possible. But it's critical for this body to know that last year, through the work of the Bureau of Narcotics Investigations, in collaboration with our partners all throughout the state, we were able to remove an absolutely astounding 56 million doses of fentanyl. 56 million. Each one of those doses could be deadly, That's not, dramatic for purposes of my statement to you. The opioid addiction and the absolute destruction it's caused and wreaked havoc on lives, is something that I'm familiar with through the course of my life. It's something that I was familiar with through being a career prosecutor, and nothing is worse than a parent having to watch their kid slip away into the web of addiction, and there's nothing they can do about it. So this is so unbelievably important.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. And to that point, in addition to that type of work, that work is done by working with departments all throughout, all throughout the state. And so we are currently right now underfunded. And again, this is a situation where GGO was taken to fund these positions. So the increase of $8.94 million is specifically for the normal cost to carry. That's what this is about. And there's another part of this that's super important. And again, the red light's stressing me out. I'm not sure, Chairman. I have 30 seconds?
30 seconds.
Okay. Traditionally, in the history of drug cases, this goes back into the 80s, the 90s. Drug forfeiture funds were used to fund all kinds of police work. Drug forfeiture funds have decreased drastically. I can tell you right now that so I'm looking right here, in 24-25, there was $10 million in that account. It's down now to, it'll projected to go be around $4 million at the end of this year. So the bad guys are so much savvier with how they handle their funds. They're using cryptocurrency. Like, we are retraining ourselves to be able to go find that money through crypto accounts and things of that nature. At the same time, we as prosecutors have also changed the way that we approach forfeiture funds in the first place. And it's the right thing to do. You don't want to just go take people's things, unless we convict someone of a crime. So my point in saying that is, by us moving forward with the way we think and understand it, combined with the type of money the bad guys are using, we don't have that money anymore to use to fund our drug work. That's why this is so important.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank the gentleman, Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, General Sunday and team. I had the great privilege of hosting a town hall with seniors on Friday in my district. And one of the questions I received, and we answered this a little bit, but I'm really interested in the recently constituted elder exploitation section of the Office of Attorney General. And I know it was only established in October, so we're going on about 5 to 6 months here of establishment. But can you, what we explained to that person who had the question is, we get local law enforcement involved at first, and then, the county area agency on aging has a role as well as the Office of Attorney General. So if you could talk about that office, please, and what you're doing to help, prosecute those who have been involved in elder abuse and exploitation.
Absolutely. So thank you for holding that town hall. Those are unbelievably important because education is the key to victory in most of these situations. Pennsylvania, we have one of the highest numbers of senior citizens in the country. We also, and that's a wonderful thing, and God willing, we'll all get there. But the reality is they are under attack like we've never seen ever in the history of law enforcement. There are most likely small countries whose entire GDP comes from stealing from American seniors. And so when you take that and combine it with the advent of technology like AI, right? And I think innovation is not mutually exclusive from protecting people.
Right.
But it has supercharged these scams to the point where, we have law enforcement sometimes that can't figure out if it's a scam. And, my older parents, they were formerly sophisticated humans, and they have a rough time with it as well. So that being said, we wanted to create a section where we could put specialized experts that are able to investigate and prosecute these cases that we can get, because we put so much work into prevention, which is unbelievably important. But at the same time, if we can get these people, we want to investigate them and prosecute them. And this goes back to the law enforcement issue of recruitment and retention. A lot of these departments, they do not have the people to train for the expert level type of investigative work because they're too busy doing traffic stops and they're doing those core competencies. So the minute we announced this, we were flooded with requests to take cases. We are already overwhelmed. And I will tell you that this is amazing. I want to thank all the legislators that helped with this on both sides of the aisle. I want to thank everybody from the administration that helped on this. And this is a collaborative effort. We're all pulling this together. And I mentioned the Area on Aging earlier for a reason. Because they're the foot soldiers that are out there a lot of times being the ones that identify if there's even an issue in some cases. They are really, really helpful. And a lot of times they go, I think, unnoticed. And I want to take a minute to just say how grateful we are for them as well. Right now in the office, the section we have one Chief Deputy Attorney General, we have a Deputy Attorney General, we have an Executive Assistant, we have a Section Director, and 4 special agents that are all working right now. Since we started this section, to your point a few months ago, in the eastern part of the state, we have 22 open cases. Central, we have 6 open cases. And in Pittsburgh and Allegheny, we have 9 open cases. And I have no doubt that as the years go on, this section will grow. And we built this section through people that already existed throughout the entirety of the office. Pulling them together.
Yeah, I mean, 10, 15 years ago, I know this body passed a law. There was a proliferation of, caregivers being made as, appointed as executors of estates, and like it used to that used to be how the fraud occurred. Now it's much more sophisticated, where you've got people impersonating the voices of children, saying they're in an accident. One gentleman, I'll just mention his story. He said it was his son who called, and he said he needed $15,000 ASAP, and that particular transaction was stopped at the bank level. They went to the bank to withdraw the money. He said that the banker finally asked him, well, have you spoken to your son? They called him. He had and that's how they found out it was a scam, because he finally spoke to him. So thank you so much for your work in this, but it is more sophisticated, and we need to do whatever we can to protect our seniors.
This is all hands on deck, and I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, General.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Alsumer.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. Good morning, Attorney General Sunday. I'm glad that you're here today. Thank you for all you do for the Commonwealth, and for all the members of the Attorney General's office. Thank you for all you do and sacrifice for the Commonwealth. It's my understanding that the Drug Law Enforcement Unit has close working relationships with county district attorneys when it comes to drug investigations. And in response to drug trafficking becoming more aware of asset forfeiture laws, making seizures and forfeitures more difficult. District attorneys also have accelerated their involvement in drug investigations, continuing to add labor to their already busy workload. I have 3 questions related to this. Can you explain the financial correlation between your office and county officials given their accelerated involvement in drug enforcement?
So, to begin with, our Bureau of Narcotics Investigations collaborates with every DA's office probably in the state. We work together on cases. We share information. A lot of this also comes down to officer safety. When you have departments that don't have enough police officers, this type of work is unbelievably dangerous. And so you want to make sure that you have enough officers there to do it, so we can be supportive in that way. In addition to that, obviously, we have technical expertise in our office that we utilize in collaboration with the Pennsylvania State Police. That would be special information with regard to wires and things like that, and other investigative methods that we have specialized training in as well. Sometimes when we can do it, under certain circumstances, we may help a department with overtime if it's an AG case, for that officer to be able to come out and be helpful in that matter. And so that's really important. And tying back to the initial part of your question where you referenced that the drug dealers are more cognizant of the forfeiture laws, they are. And so when you talk about people that, drug dealers that are selling, and we have a case like there was one of my last cases as DA was one where someone was utilizing the dark web to buy and sell drugs. They were making money by utilizing different crypto schemes to do that. And we have the expertise to be able to assist in identifying and locating how that money is being stored. We can help with working with colleagues all around the country, other AG's offices and our federal partners on how to identify how the drugs are being transported and in particular how they're being used in the dark web.
Okay, I'm going to ask the two, and I'll let you respond to both of those. How important is the drug task force funding, especially in rural district attorneys within the Commonwealth? And can you provide information on whether the costs of drug investigations have increased for such things as police salaries, drug prices, and technology?
Well, the first part is that funding is critical. So for those that don't know, a district attorney's office can choose. They can either run their own drug task force or they can utilize the one that's ran by the Attorney General's office. In a lot of the really, really small counties, the very rural counties, that drug work is a little bit different, where they know who the people are, they're familiar with the families, and oftentimes you have better investigations and prosecutions when that's a more locally driven type of case. And so I can say as a former DA who was a recipient of those funds, if we didn't have that, we would have been toast. And so that's really important. And I also want to reemphasize again the fact that because a lot of these departments are understaffed, they don't have, like there are certain types of cases and investigations that you don't want to have people dabble in, for lack of a better way to put it. You want experts that are trained, that understand how to do it, and understand every aspect of it. That's critical for officer safety. It's critical for protecting the integrity of the case. It's critical for protecting due process. It's critical for all of that. And so that's why that money is so important, because it gives them the ability to train those officers that they otherwise couldn't train to do that type of work.
Thank the gentleman.
Thank you.
Representative Friel. And we're going to go to Representative Webster.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here today. I do have a little bit of a sensitive question, and I want to orient us towards, it's a budget question as well, and I know it's sensitive. Many of my constituents are very concerned about the fidelity and the sanctity of our elections coming up in November. The budget question is, do you have resources? Do we have the kinds of things that we need to protect elections in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
So a couple answers to that.
Yeah.
To start with, when I was an elected DA, I had the ability as an elected DA to work with the AG sort of election task force every time there was an election coming. And that's something that I took advantage of as a DA. And what we did was we collaborated together. We shared information. We would share like, hey, something's happening over here. Is this something we should look at? Mm-hmm. Well, that same process is in place. And so that's us working with the DAs, working with the administration, working with everyone to do everything we can to ensure that elections are safe and fair. Fair. And so to that point, very simply, you know, the law surrounding, especially when you look at like criminal activity versus, like there's a lot of different nuances to it. Mm-hmm. You know, we're certainly prepared to work with the locals on the things that might come up that day, mm-hmm. but we are always at the ready to work with our colleagues to investigate instances, and we've done that, and we've charged individuals for doing, for conducting criminal activity during the course of committing elections.
Yeah, I just think that's something that I know at home they want me to be able to say, and to be able to say, we've had this discussion, and Pennsylvania knows how to run elections, and we know how to support the folks that are running them.
And I appreciate that, Rep. Thank you.
Thank you. To switch real quickly, so the veterans question, you have in fact taken on some work to protect veterans' benefits and others from fraud. And is there anything that this legislature should be doing with you to give you the resources or the cover to?
I think this goes directly back to our GGO funding, and what I mean by that is, and obviously, like, I'm a veteran. I work with veterans. These are huge, major issues. We have one of the highest veterans populations in the country here in Pennsylvania, and it goes back to the core issue that I think is facing our budget, which is the GGO funding. Because, we haven't really got into this yet, but very simply, for many, many years, we have utilized money from our restricted account to fund things that should have been funded through our GGO account. And as a result of that, that money in the restricted account at one point, like 5 years ago, was around like, what, $45 million? $46 million, and most recently it was at, by the end of this year, under $6 million. And so my point is, utilizing that each of those years to keep things going was fine in the moment, but it is an absolute reality that if we don't ensure that the structure of the budget is one that can last for when we're all long gone, okay, then we're not going to be in a good space. And so my point is that we can move resources to different places if we have that GGO funding. And so that's my answer.
Yeah, I appreciate that very much. I know it gets political really fast. And one of the things I like to say, and this is the academic answer, this is Dr. Webster, rather than veteran Webster asking this question, right? That small government, which we're all in favor of smart government, but small is a measure of quantity, and we're short in some ways. And so we should be talking about good government and quality as we go along, and I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Flood.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Secretary, or General, sorry, my apologies, General Sunday. I just want to build on what the good representative from Dauphin County was talking about, which is scams. I host a scam seminar every year in my district, as well as many of my colleagues do, in collaboration with our local law enforcement, our district attorney, and the Department of Banking, to educate the constituents on the unfortunate levels of scams that are running rampant across the state. It's targeting our vulnerable residents, in particular our seniors. Often these scams involve the loss of a significant amount of money for these targeted, and some losing as much vital resources that force them to have to leave their homes. I had a 90-year-old woman who was forced out of her home because she was scammed out of all of her savings and money that she uses to live on. I also had another one where seniors get a link in their text messages asking them to click on this link. They're sent an email. It gives access to all of their computer information, and they are able to access their bank accounts and their investments. And then tragically, I had another woman who was contacted through Facebook Messenger, and she was contacted by a person by the name of Mel Gibson, who said he was in need of help. She sent him a significant amount of money, and when she realized it was a scam, she fell into a depression and she killed herself. These are really, really sad situations that my constituents are facing, and constituents across Pennsylvania. So you've already discussed how you're working to combat these issues with scams, but given that the governor is providing the level of funding that is is not providing the level of funding that you're requesting, does that impact your ability to respond to and combat these scams and protect our vulnerable residents?
It does, absolutely. And I just looked here. So last year, the Office of Attorney General, so we have the Office of Public Engagement, which I always want to put a plug in for everyone in here. We can go anywhere and give presentations on so many different topics. In 2025, we gave 1,300 presentations to over 125,000 people. And those presentations are so unbelievably important because, you know, you can't fix the harm after it happened oftentimes, but if you can prevent it, then that's where we need to be. And so, again, this goes back to, and I'll pull it right back to our GGO funding. Over the years, that money has been utilized for a lot of, well, actually our PPD funding, so our restricted account has been used to supplement our GGO funding. And so we've made a specific ask in the document, and it's documented throughout our entire budget ask for giving us money to be able to get that GGO account where it needs to be. Because that brings us back to a position where we can hire people that can do this additional work. And what you're talking about is so important because when we talk about technology, even in the last year, the technology has increased on all these scams. For us to be able to properly investigate unbelievably complex, technologically advanced criminal cases, we need experts to do that. We pay for those experts from the PPD account, the restricted account, which is what's funding the GGO account. And so we don't have the resources in that account anymore to be able to fund these experts. And we have to. I mean, Pennsylvania, we're the 5th largest state in the country. And I will not sit back and allow us to be in a position where we can't go into the breach and be the people that are fighting these fights for Pennsylvanians. And so very simply, I would ask everyone to take a look at the specific budget request with regard to funding GGO, because that frees up those restricted accounts so we can use them for experts, for technology, so that we can stay, we'll never be ahead of the bad guys, but at least put us on parity.
Well, and these scams are always changing, and it's really hard, especially for our seniors. But I don't want to just say the seniors, because even myself, I was scammed on the day of my scam jam. So, I mean, how ironic is that? But to try and
You're not the only one.
I know. But real quick, is there a mechanism to help victims recover the loss of the funds?
So we have a scam squad, and what we do is when someone calls the AG's office, we will immediately go into action to try to mediate and mitigate the amount of money that that person loses. And so call the Attorney General's office, send them our way. We have people, that's their sole job in the world, is to do that. And sometimes it's hard to do it because if people use, crypto ATMs, or if they, use, if they wire the money, things like that, it makes it a lot harder. But if they use credit cards, if they use certain apps, then we might be able to mitigate that and help save them from losing as much money that they otherwise would have lost.
That's great information.
Really important.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Guzman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Attorney General and team, for your time this morning. And of course, thank you for your continued work on behalf of all Pennsylvanians. Mr. Attorney General, in my district, I hear a lot from working families every day about the challenges they face, whether it's finding good jobs, keeping our kids safe online, protecting our seniors from scammers, and or putting the bad guy or gals away for good, while keeping our neighborhoods safe. So in that vein, Mr. Attorney General, I'd like to ask you particularly about a new phenomenon that's been occurring lately, and that's on the platform of Roblox. So Roblox is a child's game that is used by 83 million daily users, of which 42% of its users are under the age of 13. Just this last October, in October 2025, a Bucks County family sued Roblox because their 13-year-old child was sexually exploited on the platform. In fact, anybody that's watching at home, I encourage you to Google Roblox Discord 2026 sexual predators, and you'll read a whole lot about all the cases all around the country in regards to Roblox and its enabling of child predators. And so, Mr. Attorney General, I'd like to ask you specifically in regards to your work in helping to secure our online platforms and to secure our kids online. And so, how does your office coordinate with technology platforms, when it comes to these type of predator investigations?
So first of all, thank you so much for bringing up this question. This will be, in a lot of ways, the challenge of our future. And I'm very proud of the work that we've done in this area. So to start with, we live in a world where sometimes not everybody gets along. I've found a place where there's a tremendous amount of cooperation. So back in December of this past year, the Pennsylvania AG's office, myself, along with my colleague from New Jersey, we led an effort which was the first step in compelling many, many companies, and I'll go through them with you, to change the way that they do business, in particular with regard to their chatbots. This is public information, and to your point, anyone can go and look and see what is happening with a lot of these chatbots that kids are using, where these kids are going into the chatbots. I mean, I have heard, we mentioned the Teen Talk from a few weeks ago. I mean, we had someone tell us that they know someone who thinks that the chatbots, like their girlfriend or boyfriend, we have, and this is public, chatbots where they have aided people in committing suicide, where they have aided children in behaving in ways and doing things that no parent would ever in a million years ever accept and approve. So we went around the whole country, and we managed to pull together 42 attorneys general, 21 Rs and 21 Ds. And we came together and we sent the first step in how this works to Anthropic, to Apple, to Chai AI, Character Technologies, Inc., Google, Luca, Meta, Microsoft, NAMI, OpenAI, Perplexity AI, Replica, and XAI. And so this effort is ongoing right now as we speak. This is a public letter. This is available for you to review. Shortly after that,
so if I can very quickly, because our time is limited now.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
Those companies are AI companies, and of course they deserve to get those letters. But I'm speaking specifically about the online gaming platforms of Roblox, where again millions of kids play online, and they're being exposed right now to child predators. Mr. Attorney General, the days of child predators being on chat rooms and chatting on with their potential prey is over. They're playing games with the actual children playing in children games. And so I'd like to ask you specifically in terms of these companies that are allowing predators to play on their games, what are we doing to help protect our kids from these companies that are allowing child predators to run rampant over their platforms?
So what I can say is this. What I can say, because there's certain things I can't discuss in a venue like this, but what I can say is that we take this unbelievably seriously. And this is something that we are looking at. I can't go any detail on that, but I will say that an understanding of the harm caused by what you're talking about right now is not something that has escaped us. And we have a lot of resources in place to do things that we can do to take care of these situations.
So I'm asking all the parents at home to check your kids' Discords and Roblox information for messages from other individuals that they may not know. Very quickly, because I know my time is very limited, I want to talk about violent crime, because it doesn't just impact Philly or Pittsburgh, it impacts the city of Reading, of which I represent. And so on this task force that you guys have, what can we do besides giving more money? What can we do to expand that task force to include smaller cities like the city of Reading?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our gun violence task force works with small cities all throughout the Commonwealth. We've made it, and to your point, because I was a DA in a third-class city, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And what I can say is we have already started communication on ways that we can expand our gun violence task force into those different areas. There are other things that we can do with regard to the mental health crisis to impact the public safety in those areas as well through our LEDI mental health component. In addition to that, obviously the drug work, our Bureau of Narcotics Investigations, I promise you they are very active with your constituents. And so this is something we do all the time. I think that what I would like to do, because you have a lot of really good questions here, I would love to set up a time to talk to you one-on-one about some of the tech issues that you brought up in particular. to kind of, and as things progress, I will obviously be in a much stronger position to have those conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney General. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair thanks the gentleman and recognizes Representative Mustela.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon, General Sunday. Your budget documentation states funding levels in the proposed budget are lower than we had requested, and enacting anything lower would necessarily have devastating consequences on our office. Now, I would assume kind of, just what we've done for the past hour and a half here. The mission of the Attorney General's office is to maintain the highest standards of ethics, protect life, property, constitutional and consumer rights, to ensure safety and freedom for those living and visiting the Commonwealth of PA. Now, understanding the current state of the Commonwealth's finances, can you please tell us specifically what your office is doing to undertake any program adjustments, staffing adjustments, and that you can ensure your office can continue to provide the necessary services and resources that the Commonwealth expects from the Attorney General's office if funding is not provided?
So, so to break that down, the first question, if funding is not provided, what would we do essentially? Right. I have to go back again, and I just want to touch on this briefly because this is a critical part of this answer, and that is going back to the restricted accounts. So because GGO remained stagnant for so many years, that forced us to draw from the restricted accounts. Okay, these restricted accounts, and this is unbelievably important, they would otherwise be supporting consumer protection investigations, equipment needs for agents, essential upgrades to facilities, technology, and infrastructure, and they've been depleted to an absolute critical level. Okay, that's really important to understand. And so the fiscal year 26-27 budget provides an opportunity to reestablish an appropriate budgetary operations. Okay, and that includes alignment of the expenditures with their designated funding sources. So, to your point, we obviously respect and understand how important it is to be thoughtful with spending. Mm-hmm. Like in our homes, in government, it is absolutely crucial. I believe that public safety is one of the main tasks of government. If our communities aren't safe, literally nothing else matters. Kids can't learn in school, businesses can't thrive. It causes so many problems. And so to that point, what we would like to do is increase the GGO funding. And I want to go back a second on that. So I don't think anyone brought it up today, but the governor's proposed budget includes a modest 2% increase in GGO, but it also includes a proposed $15.2 million in a separate law enforcement support line.
Let me ask, and nobody is going to argue with what you just said with the safety protection of the residents, but are there other ways for additional funding streams, other additional funding resources instead of what you're asking with the GGO increases?
I appreciate that.
If there's something more to that, because nobody's going to argue that we enjoy the safety protection that you provide. So
when you look at the work we do in our public protection division and consumer protection, we are capped at the amount of costs that we can recover. And so right now we're capped at $2.5 million. I think that if that cap was increased to $5 million, that would obviously provide us an additional $2.5 million in costs that we can go ahead and grasp as a result of all the work we do. That section brought in to the Commonwealth last year $102 million. And so if you look at that, relatively speaking, they're bringing in $102 million. The highest cost we can recoup are $2.5 million. I think that's an area where we could find some additional funding. And I always want to make it clear, we are not asking for all these additional resources. We are asking that the resources that we currently have are funded. And so, when you look at, for example, the bodies that we're asking for, it's very minimal because we've actually eliminated empty positions to be able to get this done. So.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
And of course, I make available to you my Deputy Chief of Staff, Ben Wren, if you'd like to take a deeper dive into any of those numbers.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. General.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank the gentlelady, Representative Waxman.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, you and your team. I have a couple of questions that I just want to ask and try to get yes or no answers to so that we can kind of move quickly. But going back to 2024, there have been coalitions of state attorneys general that have sued the Trump administration over federal grant freezes and funding pauses that affected education, infrastructure, and public health dollars. This was in the beginning of your term. Did your office participate in any of those lawsuits, yes or no?
So that's not a yes or no question. And the reason for that is because the complexity of our system and how our system works and functions. I'm not sure if were you present when I went through this a little while ago?
Say again?
Were you present when I went through this a little while ago?
Yes, but I wanted to try to get a yes or no.
Well, there
answer.
is. So it's actually intellectually deceiving for that to be a yes or no answer.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because you have to understand the specific legal framework that we operate with here in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I'm going to continue, and there were similar lawsuits, 20 states that challenged executive actions that restricted federal funding for climate change resilience and also disaster relief. Did your office participate in any of those cases?
What I will say again is that, and this is very important to understand, and I appreciate your question. However, over the course of that same year, we received 541 litigation referrals from the Governor's Office for General Counsel, of which 465 of them were adopted by our office that we did litigate. There were other cases that were requested that they be delegated. And under the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, that is a law and a right that the governor has, and he made that request, and he made those actions at his request. That's my answer.
That is your answer. Okay, so I'm just going to keep going here. It's a similar question. There have been several states that have filed suit over changes to federal immigration enforcement policy, as well as the expansion of detention facilities. Did your office participate in any of those lawsuits or planning to participate in any of those lawsuits?
So as I said previously, under the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, we have duties and responsibilities that are bifurcated here in Pennsylvania. That being said, the Office of Attorney General has a lot of mandated duties that we absolutely have to do by statute. That includes protecting children from predators. That includes protecting seniors from being scammed. It includes removing 56 million doses of fentanyl off the streets.
I'm gonna ask you to just kind of keep your answer just to a few sentences. You've kind of
the gentleman wants everybody will suspend. I will give you latitude on time so that the general can give full answers. Okay. So I will give latitude on time. Okay. Representative Waxman.
Thank you very much.
And so with that being said, we have a world that exists where the Commonwealth Attorneys Act gives the governor the right to bring charges or to bring cases when he deems that necessary. We received, as I said previously, 541 litigation referrals, and we adopted 465 of them. However, as I previously mentioned, because this is critical to understand, there were other cases that were delegated to the governor at the governor's request, because the governor wanted to bring those cases that he has a legal right to do. And so he brought those cases in accordance with his legal authority as the governor of Pennsylvania.
Okay, so let me maybe ask more. Thank you for that answer. And let me ask you maybe another question that'll give you a broader answer to be able to give, which is, can you just identify for me a single action that your office has taken, not that the governor took as part of the Commonwealth Attorneys Act, but something that your office has done where you have seen that the federal government has either overreached or in another way caused Pennsylvania harm? Can you name a single action that you've taken?
So that's an interesting question, the way you're phrasing it. But working with the way you're phrasing it, I will say very simply, the Office of Attorney General in Pennsylvania led the country in going after AI companies, very, very powerful AI companies, some of the most powerful companies in the entire world, that no one else was going to do, that we chose to be the leader and stick our you-know-what out there because it was the right thing to do. And what I will tell you very simply is, and this doesn't take, I think, a PhD in civics to understand, that actions like that may not have been looked upon in a manner that was what would be positive from the federal government. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I think that the point has been made, and I appreciate your time, and thank you to the chairman for allowing us a little latitude so that we could have a full exchange. Thank you so much.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Barton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, General Sunday, for being here. Thank you for your team and being here as well. And let me just preface this with thanks for all the great work you're doing in keeping our Commonwealth safe as well. And I'd like to talk to you about school safety, General Sunday. So your office requested a $3.1 million for the school safety appropriation. That's an increase of about 16%, I think just over $400,000, of which your office identified as crucial to ensure student safety. However, the governor has recommended a decrease for this appropriation. Can you provide more information on what your office intended to do with the additional $400,000+ and why you deemed it critical?
Absolutely. So the funding, so by way of background, and I'm sure you would have been a part of this, the Safe to Say Something program expanded this year. And prior to its expansion and the legislation that did so, we didn't know that was going to happen. So obviously in our previous budget, we didn't request that additional money. As a result of the expansion of the Safe to Say Something program, providing 30-day and 48-hour windows for schools to get back to the AG's office, we will have an additional need to be able to effectively effectuate that legislation. And so very simply, that will put us in a place where we have costs to carry that'll give us costs to carry, and at the same time, it'll put us in a position where we can handle the additional workload by adding those additional mandates from the legislature.
Perfect. Let me just, since you brought up Safe to Say, that my wife was a former director of student services at Parkland School District and was delighted with that program and the results that she saw of actually life-saving results that she saw with that program. Can you share with what the Safe to Say program has, Safe to Say Something, pardon me, program has done across the Commonwealth? Have you seen those same results?
Absolutely. So since the launch of this program, in the very beginning, this tip line received over 178,000 tips. And for the people that don't know how it works, very simply, a student can anonymously send a tip in on another student. So a lot of times those are individuals that might be talking about committing suicide. It might be individuals that are going to commit a crime with a gun. It could be all kinds of different things. When they send that in, it's immediately screened by the AG's office. It goes to the school, and then 911 is called if that's appropriate. And so with that being said, and that number I gave you, that actually excludes false reports that were or may have been received. So from 2024 to 25, 12.5% of the tips received were designated as life safety matters. Wow. So think about that, 12.5%. And the top tip categories we received, and this is startling, especially as a parent, bullying, cyberbullying, suicide, suicidal ideation, drug distribution and possession, smoking, tobacco, vapes in school, and inappropriate language and behavior. And I want to thank you for bringing up the Safe to Say Something program because we have a mental health crisis in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. And amongst children, it's really at an all-time high. And a lot of that goes back to general societal issues, but when we talk about the incredible work that this office and other offices have done with regard to AI, with regard to the companies that are creating this environment that is basically like throwing, fuel on top of these mental health issues, we have to be in a position to save these kids. Right. And the Safe to Say Something program is a tool that can be used. We are very, very proud of it. And I thank you for the funding we've already received, and I hope that we receive the funding we need to make sure that those young voices are heard during their time of crisis.
Right. General Sunday, thank you so much for your commitment to keeping our children and our schools safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Marcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for being here. It's great to see all of you. I actually had a follow-up question to Representative Barton's relating to the Safe to Say Something program. Obviously, as a former school board member, I appreciate the fact that this program is so helpful and is really helping our students in schools across the Commonwealth. The question that I have, well, first, two questions. So first is, do you have concerns in reducing that number at all, or do you feel confident that that amount of funding is going to be adequate for this year based on the governor's budget?
So based on the governor's budget, our request was an increase, I believe on top of that, right, Ben, of $427,000. That is what we believe we need to be able to properly run the Safe to Say Something program in light of the additional requirements that have been mandated through legislation passed last year.
Okay, thank you very much. And then my follow-up question relates to actually the program itself. You mentioned that the program is based on it being an anonymous tip. And so I have a young constituent in my district, a student, who was concerned about another student based on what she had heard. She reported it through the program, and unfortunately, her tip did not remain anonymous within that school district. And eventually, she became bullied, and she ended up having threats against her and had to switch to another school because of that. And so my question to you is, how do you protect someone's confidentiality so that the program remains as strong as it has been? I actually am putting together legislation right now, which I'd be happy to talk to you guys about, that would in some way like help to protect these students. But I just wanted your thoughts on how do we maintain the integrity of that anonymous aspect of the program so that we can continue to have it used by folks throughout the Commonwealth.
So two parts to that. Number one, the specific instance you're talking about, if you could share that privately with my first Deputy Attorney General, Kara Bowser, we'd appreciate that. The second part of this is it comes down to, in our opinion, training. Like a lot of these schools have to understand specifically how this works. Now, I will tell you that most schools do. But I don't have specific data on instances like what you're talking about. That's something that I'm going to task our Safe to Say Something program with looking into. And then that's something maybe we can use as you move forward through your legislative process.
Absolutely, I appreciate that. And I do know that there was some training included in our last budget relating to the Safe to Say Something program. And so if that confidentiality and kind of anonymous aspect to it needs to be incorporated and we need to clarify that language in some way, I'd also appreciate that opportunity to talk to you guys.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Chairman. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank the gentlelady. Chairman Briggs.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, General. Always good to see you, and Greg, always great to see you. I want to thank you and your office for the collaboration on the vape legislation, organized retail theft. We do work very well together most of the time, so I want to thank you for that. I have a couple questions, and if it depends on you, how quickly you want to answer these, and then I will leave it if you want to talk a little bit about reentry, which I know you're passionate about, and mental health. But this is a budget hearing. We have been passing in the House legislation that I think would help us generate revenue. The False Claims Act passed out of the House and sitting in the Senate, and last session we advanced antitrust legislation. And I was hoping to get your take on if you view them as favorable for the Commonwealth, to have those extra tools to advance. We had worked with previous generals regarding the antitrust legislation, and I kind of wanted to see if you've looked at that legislation, the false claims and antitrust, get your thoughts, and if you think they would be of value.
So with regard to both pieces of legislation, I have not personally read them, and that's not indicative of the fact that we're not reading them. I have someone in my office, multiple people tasked with going through that. So I just wanted to make that very clear. I will say that with regard to antitrust, after I spoke last year, that obviously triggered meetings on our part. What's the right way to do this? I know that under antitrust for us in Pennsylvania, we obviously utilize the Sherman Act and our federal remedies that are available, in addition to some common law remedies. And to that point, I think that with regard to antitrust, again, and I don't have an answer for this other than I think that we need to listen to all of our constituents and bring everybody together, have a conversation, and so that we can take that into consideration. One of the things that I heard, and again, this is solely through bits and pieces of conversations I've had with some stakeholders in going through this process on our end, was a concern about the overall nature of our sort of litigious society in Pennsylvania. And so when that was brought up, I just, hey, that's something that I guess needs to be discussed. And so my hope is that these conversations can go on, listen, take into consideration whatever these other individuals feel about that, but specifically with data, like not just it's a bad environment, like what are you talking about exactly? And then just continue the conversations. That's my position on that for now. I know that we remain neutral, I believe, with that. Didn't we remain, Ben? We remain neutral, right? Okay, so with regard to false claims, I'm getting up to speed on false claims, to be honest. And so I'd be more than happy to have a separate conversation with you on false claims.
I think those conversations would be great. I think, in my opinion, there's a lot of money that we leave on the table during these litigations with the Sherman Act and others. So it was something we did previously. I would love to have a roundtable with the various stakeholders in your office. Again, that would be really, really helpful. So if you want to talk, we have a couple extra minutes. I know mental health is something that you've been very passionate about in York and in the Office of Attorney General. If you want to share some thoughts how we could work together to address that, it's really not a question, just an opportunity for you to address it.
Is that reentry?
Mental health.
Okay, so
well, either one. So reentry, you've been long-winded, so you get to pick which one you want to close. You and I have had conversations about reentry, so it's.
I apologize for my long-windedness. My mom's listening. I want to give her a show, So, but I will say very quickly that she actually is listening. But very quickly, that we have a mental health crisis in Pennsylvania. It's one of my top priorities in the office. We've taken what has already been a wonderful thing, the LEDI program, and we have added to it an entire mental health component. So right now, I think we have 7 counties that have signed on. I think that we need to look at the mental health side of the LEDI initiative, find ways that we can strengthen it. We have to find a way to have these crisis centers so that people can have access to mental health care so that they don't go languish in some prison somewhere. Huge part of what we do. I've traveled around the state to talk to people that have done it successfully. We were just in the Lehigh Valley this past week having this conversation with St. Luke's to talk about ways we can do this as well. It's an absolute home run, and I would love to talk to more people about it. This is the LEDI mental health component. If we truly want to make society better, we have to increase access to reentry. We have to decrease barriers to reentry for people coming out of prison. When people work, magic happens. It changes their lives, it changes their families, and these have to be good career-type jobs. And this is something we really believe in, and so I look forward to speak with anyone that wants to talk to me about ways that we can get people to work and after they've been held accountable.
Thank you, General. Thank you, Chairman, for a couple extra seconds.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Kale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General, thank you for being here today. After hearing the questioning from my friend, the gentleman from Philadelphia, just a couple of minutes ago, I just want to extend a thank you. A thank you for taking your job seriously, for being focused on issues that really matter here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that matter to my constituents, for using the tax dollars that are in your control well. I want to say thank you because we've had in the past, not that long ago, attorney generals that used the position, the grandstand, and you have not been an attorney general of that sort. And I truly appreciate the seriousness that you are bringing to your position. I do have a question as it relates to artificial intelligence. A lot of the bills that we are proposing here, that we are passing, a lot of the things that are occurring here in the Commonwealth and beyond are around artificial intelligence, whether it's in consumer protection, whether it's in medicine, fraud, child predators. My question for you today, is your staff, or is your office rather, properly staffed to meet these new technologies and these new issues in artificial intelligence?
The short answer is no. We are doing everything we can to get there, and that's why this goes back to the proper GGO funding. So the account, our Public Protection Division account, that's where the money comes from to get the experts, because you have to hire experts in all these cases, and because the sophistication of the issues has become so advanced, we have to bring in more advanced people to work on them. What we are doing internally is we are creating a section that's going to focus on computer. Well, I don't want to say computer. What is the actual name of this? That would be our data privacy and responsible technology unit.
That's a lot.
But the whole purpose of it is to put us, because when you look around the country, both times we've had huge issues that we've had to face with AI, it's been Pennsylvania and New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Connecticut once, and then we had West Virginia helping us. And so my point is we have to be the state that's going to step up and do that. So we want to internally figure out, how do we get these experts in here? What do we have to do to be in a position to successfully handle this stuff? I mean, technology is a wonderful thing, right? I mean, innovation is not mutually exclusive from protecting Pennsylvanians. And I thank the legislature for being so thoughtful in how everyone's working through these issues. Like, for example, the CSAM legislation that we now utilize here to prosecute people that are using AI to create CSAM. That has been powerful. We use it all the time. And I want to make another point very quickly, and that is that there was an AI executive order that was put out, and I made it clear, and I want to reemphasize that here, that if the constitutionality of one of our AI statutes is challenged, we will defend that statute, just so you know as you're going through your lawmaking process.
I appreciate that. I'm just curious. I would imagine in the private sector, in the tech sector, the salaries are very competitive. Are you guys in a position to be able to match that, or at least get close enough so you can attract talent to your office?
They are vastly different than what we make, and we are not in a position to do that. What we are in a position to do is get our salaries at an equal level with the other government agencies, because then the way we attract people is by the mission of the office. There are hundreds of attorneys in this office that have worked here for over 4 or 5 different AGs because they love the work. They get to go in court, they get to fight bad guys, they get to fight the biggest bad guys out there. And so what we need to do is have parity with the AG's office and the Office of General Counsel. And then let us do our job and attract people and bring them in.
Oh, Mr. Attorney General, thank you for the work that you and your team are doing. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Representative Cerisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney General, and thank you to my colleague who just spoke that asked all my questions. But it's good, thank you. You know, as we talk about AI and how much it's affecting all of our lives, every day, every one of us is hit with something new with AI. And I think you answered some of the questions, but in a perfect world, what would your department look like if we were really going to do this right with funding, with staff, to take on AI? And I want to thank you also for coming out with the statements you've come out with, and I've come out and complimented you on that, with being able to say that you will take this on no matter what the executive order says. But what would this look like in a perfect world if we really could fund you properly to where we should be to combat all the issues that we're starting to see in AI?
I would say that the proposed budget from the Attorney General's office is a strong start. Because what that does, and I hate to be a broken record on this, it puts us in a position where we can begin building up those Public Protection Division funds, because those are the funds that we use when we litigate in our lawsuits. That funds the experts, that funds accountants, it funds, like I said, cyber experts. Like, that's where we fund our lawsuits, is through that account. And that's a critical part of all of this, because Our goal in all of these lawsuits is not to seek as much money as we can get. Our goal is to make sure that Pennsylvanians are safe. And oftentimes that may not result in a financial win. It may result in us changing a company's process. It might be behavioral change that removes the problem that was causing the issue. Because our goal, first and foremost, is to stop the behavior that's hurting people.
Right.
And so to that point, and does anyone disagree with that? Okay, I know the people in this bench in particular, this is a huge issue, but to be able to fund the Public Protection Division account by putting the appropriate money in GGO will allow us to let the system work to be able to go and do the job that we're supposed to do.
Thank you for that. On that same, and I have another question after this one. We have a bill that we've passed the House, I think, with 180 votes, but we got really no response from your office other than, I guess you remain neutral or didn't really provide anything on a click to cancel, where it allows people to cancel any type of subscriptions, anything online, the same way they subscribe to it. We're trying to get it passed in the Senate. But your office didn't take much of a stand on it, and it's more of a consumer protection law that we're trying to move forward. It says if I subscribe to whatever online, I should be able to unsubscribe just as easily to get off of it. I just wanted to know where you might stand on that. I could give you the House bill if it helps. $12.99.
So we're not familiar with the bill, and so we will. You said House Bill 1299.
Yes.
Okay. We'll
look into that.
Okay.
Immediately look into it, and we will circle right back to you.
And then on one more thing, when we talk about consumer protection, and your office has been great working with my office and the senator's office in my district on an issue that we've seen in seniors as far as properties and real estate and the charges for rents that are happening. It has gotten out of control as we see these private equity companies coming in and buying up manufactured home communities and communities similar to that around the Commonwealth and pushing rents through the roof. And we passed a bill here in the House, and I don't know what the bill number was, to stop this predatory actions, but has stalled in the Senate. And I wanted to see what kind of stance that we can work with your office to make this happen and push the law through where the governor says he'll sign it into law to make sure this does not continue to happen throughout the Commonwealth.
So I'm looking right now in my paperwork in front of me to find something, but I can't find it. And what it would have been is, so we actually have litigated cases, and we've had settlements within the last year where we actually compelled 23 deeds to be given to individuals who thought they were doing a rent-to-own scenario, and they got screwed. And so we sued them, and we got all 23 individuals their deeds. And we also won, I think it was around $900,000 in restitution as well in those cases. And so we have an area of expertise within our office in looking at those cases. And I'm not sure if that quite hits what you're describing, but if that happens, we're here. And if someone files a complaint, like, we will investigate it. To the point of legislation, I certainly would want to look at it before I would ever comment on it. I learned the lesson and I will state that my Deputy Chief of Staff is paying attention to this and he's working on it. I mean, I learned a long time ago not to say about whether I like a bill until I read it, because bad things happen when I do that. So I would like to review it first and be able to circle back to you.
Thank you, and thank you to your staff who have been diligent on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman Struzzi.
Thank you, Chairman Harris. First of all, I want to say kudos to General Sunday and Chairman Harris, to both of your moms, for watching this. I hope they're still watching.
My mother literally texted me and said, "I'm watching you." So, yes, she is watching.
Well, we appreciate it. That's two. No. First of all, thank you for the tremendous testimony today, for all of you being here. I think we can all agree that putting public safety first is the primary function of government, and we support that wholeheartedly. But again, I think this is the start of the budget process, right? These budget hearings are really the beginnings of our negotiations to try and understand, where it's important to fund certain things, where we shouldn't be funding things. And while we are concerned with the overall number that the governor has put forth for this current spending proposal of roughly $51.5 billion, I think we can all agree, and I think we've heard that throughout these hearings, that funding your efforts is fundamental. to ensure the safety of our communities, to ensure the safety of our young people, and to make sure that our seniors are protected. So just to clarify, getting these numbers correct, in the governor's proposed budget, he is recommending that in last year's proposed budget, the current budget that we're in right now, he recommended 63 million, but you requested 73 million. Is that correct? In last year's budget for your GGO line?
Is that right, Ben? Yes. That's correct.
Okay. And then in this current budget proposal, you requested 82 million, and the governor is proposing 59 million. Is that also correct?
And that's specifically for GGO?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. So I think that's concerning, and I think you've done a really tremendous job today of sort of outlining what won't happen if your office isn't properly funded. And I think that is jeopardizing the safety of our residents here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Are you concerned that the governor isn't prioritizing your office and public safety?
I mean, I wouldn't venture to say that I have that concern because I try to focus on my role and what I can do with what I have. I don't know what motivates different people when they come up with their budget proposals, but what I can say very simply is we appreciate the additional funding that was proposed in the governor's budget, but it just isn't enough.
Okay.
And so I would hate to draw that inference based on that budget.
Okay, well, I think we can all appreciate and support what you're doing. And as I said, this is the beginning of the negotiation process. So we understand how these things work, but I think that fundamentally providing for public safety and your efforts is something that we should all be focused on achieving. So thank you very much for being here today.
Thank the chairman. General, definitely thank you for being here. I will say, for the record, I think it is dangerous to make inferences on people's views and opinions, because in this very chamber, there are time and time again where bills are put up, and respectfully, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, for varying reasons, vote against it. It says it's too much money and all these other things, and many of those things are priorities for safety and whatnot. And if that's the case, then we could all make the inference that when you vote against many of those things, many folks in this chamber voted against the budget in general. So if you voted against the budget that we literally just passed in November, I can therefore make the inference that you do not support the Attorney General's office, even though you stood up here and asked questions in support of the Attorney General and you did not vote for the budget. See how inferences work? If I make the same inference, then it seems as though you're not in support of the safety and security of Pennsylvanians because you didn't vote on the budget of which the Attorney General's office is a part of. And so I would caution any of my colleagues from making those type of generalizations and inferences on how people feel. As a matter of fact, I think in our House rules, if our parliamentarian was here, we would be able to strike that from the record, because I believe our House rules require that you not make such inferences about people's motives when they are voting. And so I just want to be very careful and clear as we move forward, because we can make a whole lot of inferences based off of how people vote. Mr. General, I do have one question, which I don't actually, this was posed to me by one of our members in leadership, so I'm going to ask this question on his behalf. There was a concert in Pittsburgh with Mumford & Son. No clue who that is. Do y'all know who that is? You know who that is? It's a group?
I'm familiar.
Okay, sorry. I have no idea. I feel real bad. You know who it is? Okay, okay. Maybe I live under a rock. I don't know. But okay, so thank you. Apparently that'll be a part of my playlist going home at the end of the week. Anyway, so the ticket agency advertised that there's only 5% of tickets left, when the fact is the tickets had not even gone on sale yet. And we've passed twice in this chamber, overwhelmingly, bills banning that type of deceptive practice. So the question is, do you believe it is unlawful an unlawful deceptive practice for ticket resellers and resale marketplaces to make these misleading assertions online when talking about ticket sales?
So my answer to that is obviously I thank you for the question. I thank you for the question, and I understand how that could irritate someone, and I understand the issues obviously that are being faced there. And with that being said, so the way it works is the unfair trade practices laws make it pretty clear that this conduct would be a concern. I know there's legislation that's been introduced that would provide more clarity, and that is an effort that we would certainly be supportive of. We could certainly demur. I would decline to prejudge this specific case because I would want to look at the facts. We would want to conduct an investigation, and I don't think that it benefits anyone when I do prejudge a situation without looking at the facts and so forth. So with all that being said, I think that I go back to the fact that there's legislation being introduced. We certainly would look at that. If someone does feel that there is a violation of the Unfair Trade Practices Consumer Protection Law, I would ask them to file a complaint with our office, and we will absolutely look into it.
Thank you. Okay, so apparently I'm going to be listening to Mumford & Son to figure out who they are. If you are a Mumford & Son fan, please do not come for me on Instagram or TikTok or whatever, because I don't know who they are. I will find out before the day is over. And with that, this will conclude our budget hearing with the Office of the Attorney General. We want to thank General Sunday and his whole team for being here this morning, and we will be back at 1 o'clock this afternoon for DCNR and DEP's budget hearing right here, 1 p.m. in the House chambers. This budget hearing is now adjourned.